Welcome to the first of many videos here on my channel for the e46 Turbo Wagon project. If you're subscribed here for the Toyota Celsior project or the Sonata project, don't worry, both of those are still very much underway. But as we move forward on the channel, there's going to be kind of a rotation of vehicles. So when I first bought the car in 2019, of course I did every cooling system component, all the hoses, water pump, thermostat, all those kinds of things. And I always told myself if there was some catastrophic failure, that would be the point that I went the full turbo route. And of course, in late 2022, after a couple years of owning the car, that day finally came. When I looked down suddenly, I realized that the temp gauge was all the way in the red. And obviously that's a very bad sign. On the e46, you need to pull over and turn it off right away, which I didn't have the opportunity to safely do for about another 45 seconds or so. So after some time, I tore into it and discovered that it had a bad water pump. Because the car overheated, I knew almost certainly that the head had warped and lifted off of the block, which you can imagine is no bueno. So that meant that we were in for a full top to bottom rebuild. And that's exactly what we did. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the history of that, show you some of my kind of archival footage of all of that stuff over the last 10 months of this project. Then next time there's gonna be some things that we need to button up, and then we're gonna have the car running here before too long. Now, on the topic of water pump, turns out I didn't know that there was a metal impeller on the water pump, but I bought the OEM one, which is plastic, and of course that whole impeller just basically disintegrated. That was the cause of this whole project. I found out fairly quickly, but I pretty much decided right off the bat I wanted to go full bore into this. Now, this particular car is a 325i, which means it has the 2.5 liter straight six, but they also made a 330i, which is a 3 liter straight six, and that came mostly in the sedans. I think some of the wagons came with it, but my car is already manual, so I knew this had potential and I wanted to get the 330i engine in it. So I bought a used long block off of a guy on Facebook Marketplace who also sold me a diff and a drive shaft. Almost all of that turned out to be junk because it was from a flood car, but it gave me the opportunity to tear that engine down and really get a handle on it. But I later found out that the only differences between the 325 and the 330 is that the crankshaft, the pistons, and one of the camshafts are different. So I managed to steal the crankshaft out of the bad engine, and that meant that I could take my block and head to the machine shop, have them clean it all up. So I pulled my engine out of this car, which is only the second time I've ever pulled an engine out of any car, which felt like a massive accomplishment. I took everything to the machine shop and they got it all cleaned up. They had to surface the head 12 thousandths to get it flat, which is about 1,000th away from the limit. But that meant that I knew I was safe to go ahead and use my block and head, combine it with the crankshaft, and sort of build an amalgamated engine. I bought some used 330i pistons from a wrecker that I watch on YouTube and like. Shout out Eric from I Do Cars, really appreciate that. I also needed to time cert my block, and what that means is to put these little steel coils in the threads of the block to strengthen it, because the block is aluminum and those threads can sometimes pull out. So I needed to make sure I had full strength here for this turbo build. Now, it's worth mentioning that it is totally possible to turbo a 325 or a 330i completely unopened. People say, you know, they call it just unopened, like meaning you've done nothing to it and you can turbo it. But for me, I wanted the maximum reliability. So every single thing that I could replace through this project was every seal, every pulley, everything that I could possibly do. So I really started to feel like we were making some significant progress here, but of course, little did I know there was a long way to go. I made a pretty cool discovery on the Boosted E46 World Facebook page, which is where I learned almost everything I needed for this project, which is that you can use Nissan VQ main caps as your head studs in this car, which is really cool. So that allowed me to kind of have extra confidence that with a freshly decked block, brand new head gasket, and with head studs, I would have a lot more strength here when we start throwing boost at this engine. By this point, the project had been well underway for about 3 months, and I thought this was going to take me 3 or 4 months total, and I had been working on this nearly every day for 3 months. My girlfriend and I were fortunate enough to take a trip to Europe in the meantime, which was really great. Although when I got back, I wavered a little bit on whether I wanted to go turbo because I knew there was a lot more work ahead and a lot more cost. So because of this kind of wavering doubt, I ended up wasting a bunch of money on parts that I didn't end up using, like non-turbo headers, a 325i clutch, some things like that really, had I just fully committed from the front end on the turbo build, I would have saved myself a lot of money and headache. But ultimately, my girlfriend and my son both encouraged me to just go and do this right, do it exactly how I intended to from the outset. By this point, it was summertime here in Florida, and it was so hot in the garage that I really lost motivation for quite a few months, and the car just kind of sat. So you know how these massive car projects go. You can lose motivation, run out of money, and so a lot of time passed over the summer while really I was waiting for things to cool down and for my wallet to settle back down a little bit. Towards the end of July, I had all the major turbo components I needed, like manifold, turbo, motor mounts, all that kind of stuff. As it turns out, this was another place I burned money. I bought the SPA, turbo manifold, motor mount arm, and the wastegate relocation pipe, and of those 3 items, only the manifold was worth it. The wastegate relocation pipe ended up blocking the outlet to my turbo, so I couldn't use that anyway, and then the motor mount arm also just would not bolt up. There's just simply no way it would work, and so that was complete junk, and I had to go buy the Rally Road one. The benefit is that I ended up taking it to a fabricator to do all the custom exhaust, wastegate tubing, intercooler piping, and it's absolutely beautiful, so I'll show you some of that later on. I also upgraded my fuel pump to a Deutschwerks DW300 pump, and I don't have any footage of that, but that'll be more than enough to carry this car to as much power as we're gonna get to. I'm not gonna reveal that yet, so you're gonna have to stick around for how much power this is gonna make, but I promise you it is a lot more than stock. I mentioned I took it to a fabrication shop, and it spent about a month there for him to do everything, and it cost a pretty penny. And really, fabrication is something I'm interested in, but it's just one of those things that I would rather spend my time learning and you know, building expertise elsewhere and pay someone like him to just do an exceptional job on the welding and fab side. Over the course of many nights leading up to it going to the fabrication shop, I got the wiring harness on, I did an M50 manifold swap, I got a Seems Legit Garage one-piece drive shaft installed, among many other things to button up. And before I knew it, the turbo wagon was sitting on its wheels out in the sunshine for the first time in nearly 9 months. I then watched it roll away on the flatbed, and then a month or so later it came back, and that's where we're at now. So what's left to get this car running? Well, really not that much. I have to button up some of the intercooler piping, get that situated. Then there's just some various hoses and things that I need to do, like my catch can. I need to run the oil feed line and then hook up the oil drain line for the turbo, run the water lines for the turbo, and then just some other small things, get fluids in it like coolant and oil and that kind of thing. And then I am using Chaos Calibrations as my tuner. So that's all gonna be remote tune, and I've got that in the works now as well. So there's gonna be some small things that I'll record and show you in a future video. So hopefully within just a couple of weeks, this car will be running and boosting under its own power. So I always intended to make a video on this car. I never intended that it would take me almost an entire year to get it done. When I set out to start, I thought this was gonna take me 3 or 4 months, but coming up on 12 months later, it's almost there. This project really excites me because I've wanted to do this for many years, and to be as close as I am to having this car running under its own power, I just can't wait. So what do I intend to do with this car? Well, I really want to put it through its paces. It's going to be, you know, a quasi-daily, but I also want to do things like go to the drag strip. I want to try drifting and do stuff like that with this. That was always kind of my idea, is that this car gets attention for it being a manual wagon. Now it's going to get even more attention for being a turbo e46 manual wagon. So I want to show up to drift days and do stuff like that and really learn. I always intended to put this thing on a track and have real fun with it. So that's kind of the goal from here on out, is to actually use this thing, push it hard, and really enjoy it moving forward. So like I said, there's much more content to come on the BMW, the Sonata, and the Celsior. I want to say thank you to every one of you watching, especially you if you've made it this far in the video. It really does mean a lot to me. I set out with this channel to make the kind of content that I would want to watch, and clearly that resonates with you, so thank you so much. If you want to follow along more closely, you can always check me out on Instagram at jj.in.motion, and there you'll find little sneak peeks of videos and the projects underway that won't make their way to YouTube for a few more weeks. Let me know what you think about this build. I'm so stoked and really excited. I hope you are too. This has been a very expensive and very long project, but it's almost there. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.